The abuse of children by clergymen is one of the biggest and saddest scandals of recent years. While in America, millions of pounds has been paid out in compensation, closer to home in Market Wheaton, the victims of abuse at a Catholic residential school are still waiting for an apology. Asha Tanner has the story.
I am deeply sorry for the pain and suffering the victims have endured.
It's a worldwide scandal.
But one of the biggest and most disturbing cases of clergy sexual abuse happened here in Yorkshire.
He's the most evil man that I've had the misfortune to deal with.
We don't want revenge, just want him for justice.
Down this lane there used to be a care home, St William's approved school. It's now closed down and the former head teacher is in jail. 18 years after a catalogue of nearly 30 years of sexual and physical abuse was revealed, the victims are still waiting for compensation. And for these boys, now grown men, that's hard to live with.
This is the street that I was born in.
Has it changed much?
No. There was 9 of us siblings, plus my mum and stepdad, whom I hated, of the way he used to treat me and treat my mother.
Growing up in York with a disrupted home life, little interest in school and no father figure, Robert was beginning to stray.
You know, I didn't used to be a rogue or anything like that. I used to just sort of be a scallywag. Nowadays, the police won't even bother. They won't bother about coming because you was in somebody's garden eating somebody's apples.
When a fresh start and a strict church education was offered, it was the answer to his mother's prayers.
Mother believed there was a God and that he went to heaven. They say that God forgives everybody, which they say he does, doesn't he? Why is there an hell?
Robert was sent to St William's, a residential school that took in boys from all over Yorkshire with troubled backgrounds. At the time, the school was run in a regimented manner by the De La Salle brothers, a Catholic order with a reputation for dealing with difficult children.
This brochure about the school sets out its aims to provide a place for the boys where they can experience concern, acceptance and control.
We was put there to be looked after, and we wasn't looked after. We was abused in every way possible. You're too scared to talk to each other about it, too embarrassed, if that's the right word, too ashamed. You pretended it didn't happen.
How were they abused? In what way?
Well, sexually abused, you know.
Were they raped?
Well, yeah.
In Market Wheaton, people still remember the brothers as figures of respect.
What sort of reputation did St William's have at the time when you were here?
Well, reputation for St William's. I think in the early stages it was a reputation as it was called a reform school, and that's why the boys were brought there, to try and reform their characters and make them into better people.
Well, my first memories of the brothers were of these very tall people in long black skirts. The same possible effect that you would have when you met a policeman, a bit of respect, and you behaved yourself when they were around.
I mean, they were of a religious order, so I think people respected that they had certain moral values, you would have hoped or thought, and yes, I think they were respected to a reasonable degree.
We had nobody to tell, because it was, you know, the Catholic Church that were doing it, and the Catholic Church didn't do things like that. You just cried yourself to sleep, because it was a terrible place.
It led some boys to self-harm.
They used to put their arms on the steps of the dormitory, and they used to ask you to jump on his arm so that it snapped. One of the young lads that done this to his arm, the Catholic monk, he just grabbed hold of his arm that was broken, and it was just swinging around, and just pulled him by it and said, "You're going to the hospital." And you can't imagine the pain.
Abuse allegations came out in the 1990s when a former St William's teacher, Father Anthony McCallan, was jailed for offences against children. The stories that emerged from this led to another brother, James Carraher, being arrested. Carraher was the school principal and regarded as an expert in child welfare. This is him in 1982 being interviewed by Look North about a runaway pupil.
If similar circumstances do occur in the future, will you be more careful, do you think?
Oh, more careful, yes, because this is the effect that experience has on one. But that doesn't take away from my statement that I think we did do what was reasonable to be done at the time.
James Carragher was sent to jail for 7 years. He pleaded guilty to 12 charges of sexual and indecent abuse.
Far from ending the story, this opened old wounds. Following his conviction, more former pupils and witnesses came forward, so many that Humberside Police reopened their inquiry.
I've been involved in some very serious cases, but the sort of abuse that came to light during this inquiry was actually very, very shocking for me. There was allegations of abuse in a chapel, for example, that took place in a chapel. And some of the detail, which has not been released, I think would make any decent person, feel really appalled at what had happened.
As a result of this second inquiry, Carraher, now out of jail, was found guilty of further abuses and sent back to prison for another 14 years.
I've been a police officer nearly 28 years, and I can honestly say that he's the most evil man that I've had the misfortune to deal with.
The Independent Police Complaints Commission investigated the police's handling of this case after several of those involved in the inquiry lodged complaints.
But the investigation had revived some painful buried memories and drawn out many more cases of abuse at the home.
Brutality, violence, rapes, beatings, assaults.
He used to come in about twice, 3 times a week.
After you put a trust in a person like that and it's gone, it's very hard to trust anybody else.
Any partners that I've had, I've never actually told them what happened. I've never actually told them.
Why do you think that is?
Because they feel that, like, maybe they think you're gay. Something like that.
2,000 pupils passed through the school during the time it was under investigation. Less than 200 have reported abuse, but the claims are still emerging.
When we see new claimants coming to us and saying, this particular abuser abused me in a particular way, in a particular place, that's the modus operandi of that individual abuser. And when you get claimants coming forward who have not spoken to each other, possibly ever, saying exactly the same things, that's the absolute crux of the case.
It's 7 years since David Greenwood took on this case. It should have been straightforward, compensation and an apology.
I didn't imagine that a supposedly compassionate organisation such as the Catholic Church would be so tough to deal with.
There was almost a resolution last year when a court ruled that the Diocese of Middlesbrough was responsible for the school. This meant they, not the De La Salle brothers, would be liable for any financial payout. But now the diocese has appealed against the decision.
The huge disappointment that the Diocese of Middlesbrough is exercising its lawful right to appeal is wholly, wholly reprehensible when compared to the damage being caused to the survivors in the meantime.
We contacted the Diocese of Middlesbrough and the De La Salle brothers. On their lawyer's advice, neither of them would talk to us until this case is resolved. What would justice mean for you?
Well, that they admit it finally, that somebody writes to us or tells us or even confronts me and apologises about what the Catholic Church has done to us, not just to